discovered the Americas and sort of conquered the Americas and almost destroyed all of the indigenous peoples here, millions and millions. But they implemented a system of government that has come to be known as the West, the Western world, based on the values of science and democracy and freedom, although it's not quite like that, but that was the idea, the Western world. Western Europe comes over, Americas, that's all the Western world. But then there's the Eastern world, everything east of the Atlantic Ocean. And the power there has largely been, through human history, human civilization, ebbing and flowing, China. China has been right there, right from the beginning of human society, but sometimes it's withdrawn from the world, sometimes it's joined the world. But when we look at conflict in the world today and who's going to have the power going forward, we have to understand the Western world led by the United States, and we have to understand the Eastern world led by China. 1.4 billion people. United States, China. Going forwards in the 21st century and the third millennium that we're in right now will continue to be a struggle between the West and the East. Some fear that the war that may happen in the future will be the third nuclear war, and it will be between the Western world with nuclear weapons and the Eastern world, China, with nuclear weapons. China is supplying Russia with a lot of its weapons and support for its war in the Ukraine. Vladimir Putin goes to China for help. Xi Jinping doesn't come to Russia. Vladimir Putin goes there. So China's a huge force. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start to understand the United States. And we'll see if we have time to move into China a little bit later. But it's so important that we really get a sense of this historic moment happening next week. And I hope that when you come to the class next week, or students watching the recordings, that you're actually going to be writing about this in your discussion posts or asking questions about this, and that you actually want to find information online next week that gives you a realistic, authentic, informed, trustworthy report on why the person who was chosen next week was chosen. But the choice will be made. Choice will be made by 350 million people in the great democratic superpower of the world next week. They're going to go in and they're going to choose. And you know who the two choices are. I'm going to stop. And I would like to read from a book, but I'll wait until you start to work this idea over in your activity. There's a very interesting book that I sometimes bring to the global leader classes, and it's the book I mentioned to you, Vicki. Yeah, this is the one I mentioned to you, okay? Yeah, good, okay. Yes. So let's just kind of bring ourselves back to where we can begin to have this conversation. And first, I want to make sure I do my attendance, okay? And then, excuse me, I have a system now after the first half of the semester where I can take attendance accurately. It's working. So everybody gets their proper participation marks, okay? So I don't need to hand the microphone around here for everyone to say their names. I can just say this. Suyang is here, Kellyanne is here, Vicky is here, and oh my God, and of course Daniel is here. I can't believe I almost forgot. They're in person, and of course they get their 3 if they post the question. And Jose is here. He just left for a moment. He's coming back. Okay, good. Hold on. And then in the cosmos, we have Ariel Peta Cadia. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Cadia or Cadia? It must be Cadia. And Eziani Augustine and Jessica. Excellent. So we now know who are all live, and I can make a note of that clearly. So before you go into your group, and I think what we'll do is to make this work today is we'll put, there's 5 here, so we'll have a group of 3 and we'll have a pair, and we'll put Kellyanne and Jose together. Okay, that will be good because I want to keep this as diverse as possible. Everybody has a chance, and it'll be interesting to see what you and Jose begin to resolve around democracy. With you from originally, is it Nigeria? Cameroon. Okay, so Cameroon, and then we have, is it Mexico? Okay, it's Mexico. Okay, so Cameroon and Mexico. Who would win that soccer match or football match? Cameroon, right? Definitely. We kick their butts. Or maybe not, okay? And then we're going to have a group where Su Young is going to go with Vicky, and we'll go with Daniel and talk about diversity here. It's wonderful, and we're lucky that even Su Young has a T-shirt today that says "I wake up" or "I waketh up." Good. So you're going to wake them up. There's a second part? Okay, good. So, does anybody have anything they'd like to say or ask about the first half of the semester, about your midterm grades, about what's happening in class in the next half of the semester up until the end of the semester? Is there anything on your mind in general about anything before it can even be about what I just gave a little lecture about? Vicky? Yeah, go ahead. Take the microphone, okay? Good. Good. Okay. Go ahead.
It's working. Hello.
It's working well. Yeah.
Okay. With democracy and everything. Oh, okay. What's doing there?
Yep.
I find that sometimes, like when there's like the presidents and stuff going, I find sometimes they feel like they're all guns a blazing, a little bit like they're like all like head front, and sometimes I find they don't always think about the other side, like the people that they're going to affect, and have like their thoughts, like you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
they're, you know what I mean. Like once they get voted in, there's always that ripple effect of what they say they're going to do, and how much do they actually do end up doing.
Well, you know, Vicky, I'm going to give you a little lovely line that talks about the political process. You campaign in poetry, you govern in prose.
Yeah.
Think about that for a moment, okay? Very often in democracy, you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose.
What do you mean by that?
I'm glad you asked, okay? So the idea is that when there is a campaign, the candidates tend to speak in loftier, more emotional, more visceral terms. They want to capture you and make you feel that they're the best candidate. But then when they get elected, now you got to get to work. You got to roll up your sleeves, and it's like the prose start. It's the longer. Prose is a book. Prose is, you know, much longer form writing. Poetry is shorter form, generally. So when you talk about governing in prose, you're talking about, well, now the real work begins. Now the hard writing begins. It's not just the shorter writing, it's the longer part, the more in-depth part. It's the real work begins. You campaign in poetry, you govern in prose.
It's almost like peeling an onion.
A little bit like that. And then but it might be in a way the reverse, Vicky, because when you campaign, you're kind of getting the core of the onion, which is the heart of it. But then when you get into the government part, you've got all the layers now to deal with. So it's like peeling the onion in reverse.
Yeah.
Governance is hard in a democracy. When you're in power, it's very, very hard to be in meetings, council meetings, constituency meetings, hearing so many different people, trying to create legislation. It's so much easier to be on the campaign trail and just talk about all these things you want to do, all these big things you want to do.
Mhm.
That's the poetry part. So that's kind of what you're saying right there.
Yeah.
It started with campaign and poetry, govern in prose. That's what we often say.
Okay. I remember Soo Young has hand up
Yeah.
something.
Okay. Good.
So I'm not sure if you remember.
Get your minds going, because in a moment you're going to work together, okay? Kellyanne and Jose are going to work together on this question of what is democracy. Soo Young, Vicky, and Daniel will work together. And then online, you will all work together as well. But Soo Young, do you want to say something? No? Okay. Good. Okay. So online. I'd like to, unless there is something that the Cosmos would like to say at this point, Ariel, Peta, Kadia, Asiani, or Augustine, before we begin this discussion, hold a second, Vicky, okay? I want to give Peta a chance to speak. All of you are pretty young still, but you have either in some vague way or maybe more directly, if you're a little bit older in your later 20s, a memory of 9/11, of where you were at that moment on September the 11th, 2001, when 4 planes filled with 19 to 20 young religious fanatics, all dressed in white. They'd all had their baths in New York before they left because they had purified themselves. They believed they were going on an important mission, and that mission would take them to paradise. I don't want to talk about the religion here. This is not about fanaticism, but it is about these 20 humans who flew planes into these great towers, skyscrapers, and began a period of destruction and death that is reverberating through the world today and through this century. And many people say that that event, when the United States was attacked for the second time in its history, Pearl Harbor was the first in the Second World War by the Japanese, another fascist group. People say that that event in 2001 impacted American democracy and shook the United States up in a way it never has before. And it really changed the way Americans think about democracy. Let's understand a little bit more from Peta what happened that day. It's important for you to keep that in mind when you have this discussion about what is democracy, because democracy can also be attacked quite seriously. Peta, can you tell me who the family were that died in the attack?
Okay, so Professor Lon, I just want to say that this is just my opinion.
Yes.
Right? That September 11th had nothing to do with religion, like absolutely nothing. That's my belief. That's my opinion. Because I think we can say that there is a track record. I mean, for those of us who like to read, that have shown different so-called religions in the past that have done things to wrong the masses, all in the name of whatever God they're serving, right? It was not only Muslims that have done that, Christians have done it. A lot of other varying religions have done it under the guise of religion. This is just my opinion.
No,
So
keep going.
I
Keep
don't
going.
think September 11 had anything to do with religion. That's my opinion. You might not agree. I remember I
Fair
spoke.
point. And I like Peta. I like the fact that I want all of you to understand too that when I put things out here as your educator, it's my job to challenge you. When a student disagrees and explains why, that's showing leadership. She's prepared to say you're wrong. We could have a longer discussion about this, and I would love to, but I absolutely respect Petta's willingness to stand up and say, this is what I think, and here's why. Thanks, Petta. So let's carry on and tell us what happened that day exactly.
I remember I was home, I think I was with my mom, and we heard that there was an accident. That's what we heard, that there was an accident. A plane crashed into a building in New York. And then we heard what building it was. And then we have family in New York that work in the vicinity. So immediately my mom got on the phone and she was trying to call and we couldn't get through. So there was a panic because I have a cousin that was working there, family member that was in law enforcement, another one that was a firefighter too. So she was calling and we weren't getting through to anybody. So then we're like, what is going on? You know? And then the following day, we started to see images come in. Like, I don't think it was for us. It was probably later that day when there was actual images that was coming in showing what had happened. And then they were saying that it was not an accident because there was more than one. And then more information kind of trickled out. But we still weren't able to get in contact with family. So at this point, my mom especially was panicking, you know.
Sure.
And then I remember that she was finally able to get some information from somebody that was in a different parts of the world that, you know, we couldn't, they weren't able to find, like my cousin who was in law enforcement and his sibling that was a firefighter. Like they weren't able to get in contact with them. So um it became days, and then we were just glued to the TV watching. We weren't getting like information from family because we weren't able to get in contact with them. um Another family member that didn't live in New York but lived close enough to New York, who actually had phone service, finally called. This was maybe day 2 or 3. And then we heard that when one of the building collapsed, my cousin, who was a firefighter, was said to have been in or near that building helping with the rescue. But we weren't sure, you know, we weren't sure exactly because the information just wasn't like coming in quickly. So we still weren't sure. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. They were advising people to stay away, but his mom left and went down there because she's a mom, so she's not listening to anybody. It's her child. And she couldn't get through whatever barricade they had. So she had to come back, and then other family members I had got in contact with her, and we were just kind of waiting. So I think maybe it was day 4 or 5 before it was confirmed that he was actually in the building when it collapsed, because he went in and out several times. And I just remember being very confused about the whole situation because I was a lot younger, obviously, and I was just confused as to what make you think you have the right, which is my question a lot of times with a lot of things, Professor Lang. Like, why do you think you have the right to do this to somebody? And then a lot of the hate talk, which is just noise a lot of times, came, and I'm like, I like to analyze things for myself. I don't go with the popular opinion. I like to think about things myself. A lot of times you won't agree with my thinking, but it's my thinking, and I can always justify why I went down this road. And I'm like, and everybody was so anti Muslim, and I'm like, this has nothing to do with religion. Because I studied religious education in school. I I wouldn't say I'm a history buff, but I like to read about history. And I'm like, this is just a group of people who decided that this was what they were going to do. It had nothing to do with, you know, and even in my own family, a lot of people had a lot of resentment, which at the time was understandable because a loved one
Sure.
was lost.
Sure.
I had another cousin who was working in another building that saw when people were actually jumping out. Like to date, she's traumatized with that because she was close enough to see when people were, and this is graphic stuff, I'm sorry.
Well, let me
When
stop for a second. I'll stop. I want to make sure we give a warning here because it is powerful. And I am starting to realize as Peta speaks bravely and eloquently, we have something I immediately will seize in any class, as any leader will, a moment, a teachable moment, a very good teachable moment. We're going to get all the content we need today about democracy, but we have this story from one of our classmates. This is stuff we can take to the bank. It's real. It's not from a book. It's from someone we can trust. So she's about to describe some things that I think you all have seen on video. Are you familiar? You're all familiar with the 9/11 attacks, right? So yeah, everybody knows. So there are some very powerful images. But the reason I'm going to continue with her until we finish is because there's a very important question to be asked in this that's all about democracy and about democracy's future, which is why would anyone want to attack the world's so-called great democracy? We'll put religion, we'll put other reasons aside, but the world's great democracy suffered a grievous attack that day. And Peta is going to explain more about the human cost. Please keep going, Peta.
Yeah, I'm just saying this kind of graphic stuff.
Yeah.
But she was in a building that was close enough, and she actually saw people, jumping out in panic, and she spoke about it, you know, and just, it was a lot to wrap your mind around, you know,
Absolutely.
and I think sometimes people get lost in what actually happened because it's so easy for us to just hate without understanding, in my opinion. And it goes a lot deeper and a lot further where people can just be influenced so much by hate. I
Yeah.
remember following that. We had acquaintances and friends that were of particular religions, who people now wanted to attack them. And I'm like, this is my friend, and her believing in what she believes in has nothing to do with anything, you know. But it's just, to me, I think people just look for a reason to hate
Yeah.
sometimes without understanding the
Standing.
fact. And I think people are lazy, Professor Lon, to investigate and actually have, as you said in previous classes, about researching and having adequate knowledge of things before they just jump on
Jump
Caribbean
on.
people say the bandwagon and just ready to just spew hate. And to me, that was what September 11th was, you know, people looking for an excuse to just spew hate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peta, thank you for first sharing the information you did at the beginning in the chat, giving us the chance to learn together, I think in a much more powerful way through the experience of a classmate, and I can bring it back to the big topic that we
Yeah.
need to understand. But please stay there because you're such a crucial part of today's class as it's turning out. Let me just review for a moment, okay? Just to help you understand. I think you all know now my teaching style a little bit, but let me just remind you, I'm seizing a moment. This is what leaders do. They see something, it happens, and they see it would really work well, and they jump on it like that, and they run with it because they know it's the right thing, and they're ready to pivot. Okay? Second thing is, the way Peta has spoken, there's a kind of deliberation. She's patient. She's not emotional. She's trying to explain to us clearly something that's difficult, and she has respectfully disagreed with me. That is the leadership mindset live. I would even say to someone like Peta, I hope that you will, once you graduate, in whatever job you do, that you will have positions of greater and greater responsibility because you have the character, it strikes me, as being able to manage the responsibility and difficult things that happen when you are in a position of leadership.
Thank you.
The third thing I will say is we're not going to go into our teams and our pairs right now. We're going to stick to this as a discussion together. And the question that we're going to address is a kind of branch of this question, what is democracy? But actually, it can help us to understand this question even better because of the import and emotion and gravity of the story we're telling, which is that moment, September the 11th. So the question is this, and can we bring the smart? Oh, we can. We're trying. Way to go. If not, look, we got our tech team working on it, and this is great. And he'll fix it if he can. If he can't, I'm not going to stop. That's leadership. You don't wait. You move on. Okay. There are more important things. So here's the question. Here's the question that we need to begin to understand. Why would anyone want to cause so much damage to a nation in the world that is said to represent the great ideal of democracy and freedom that is enshrined in its constitution and is the first country in the history of human society? Before the French Revolution in 1789, there was an American Revolution in the 1770s. It came first in the US. So there is this belief that has been built up over time, a tradition in the world that everybody looks to the United States as being this sort of beacon of freedom and progress and democracy at its greatest. Then why would they attack it? If we can begin to understand the answer to this question and begin to dig into this a little bit, I think you're going to walk out of the class today with a better grasp of why people today are saying democracy is not working anymore in the way that it used to, in the way that it became the hope of the United Nations after the Second World War, the most destructive, cruel, savage war in human history. It led to the first declaration of human rights in all of human history. It came out of the United Nations, and the United Nations was seen as this very important body of global unity and human rights. Today, the United Nations is laughed at almost. Countries bomb each other and destroy each other, and the United Nations looks on. And people say the United Nations has lost its relevance. So what's going on? Why did they attack the United States? Now, maybe we should let Peta, if you want, to begin this, but I think in the next 15 minutes, we can begin to put just a little bit of insight into our live PowerPoint slides to help us understand this question. And then you will have better context to understand the results of the election next week. And then we're going to come back next Wednesday and we're going to finish up this discussion, but we're going to have a critical piece of new information that's going to be fascinating. And that is there will be a new president of the United States. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, great. Thank you. Okay. So, Peta, do you want to try and begin this discussion and try to help us to understand, like, why would this happen? Why would these planes be flown into?
So I just put it in the chat. Chat. I said if people can attack your hope, they can control your dreams and your aspirations. And when I say that, I mean we are all hopeful about something, about whether it's advancing ourselves through academics, finances, whatever.
Yes.
And to a lot of people, the United States represents that for them, especially people from third world countries. This is what the United States represents for them.
Yes.
So I think the idea is that if they can do something to try to create a ripple, try to create some form of hopelessness in the United States, then they can probably control your dreams and what you aspire to do. Like they've messed with that now, because now you're kind of off kilt and you're thinking maybe the United States isn't the great hope, because a lot of third world countries think that way. This is where you go to accomplish things and you go back home, or you send back home and then you build forward. That's how it is for third world countries. So if you attack that, then you're now attacking people's dreams and their hopes and what they aspire to do for their family, and making changes. So then, say you were confident in saying, okay, I'm going to go here, I'm going to do this for my family, and we're going to have this kind of effect on the world. So now you have attacked them. So now you're having people question, is this actually possible?
Okay, so Peta, that's excellent. You've started to help us to understand something that I will provide a little more context on, but I want to make sure we have everybody contributing as best as possible. It's called the American Dream. There are students in the cosmos and right here in front of me who have come to Canada for exactly the same reason. We might call it the Canadian dream. What happens in the United States is very important in Canada too. We've often talked about sleeping with the elephant, as it's been said. Justin Trudeau's father, who was prime minister through the 1970s, Pierre Trudeau, early 1980s, said this, and I may have quoted this before to you. Living with the United States as a Canadian is like sleeping with the elephant. When the elephant moves its trunk, the wind blows across Canada. It's even been said that then when the elephant in the United States passes wind, the smell drifts over Canada. We understand the United States very well living here, but we also have similar dreams too. So we have begun this conversation that at the heart of what democracy is, for a lot of you, is a dream. So why would that dream be something people want to destroy? Maybe that dream isn't what it's made out to be. Maybe American power in the world and democracy isn't the democracy we think it is. So then what should it be? Let's, Vicky, go ahead and grab the microphone, okay?
Maybe because they're envious.
What's that?
Envious.
Envious.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could have envy because we
Envy.
have something that they don't have. It could be jealousy. It could be, you know what I mean? Partially.
Inequality.
That
Somehow
too.
the Americans have a lot, and the people who did the piloting of those planes
Mhm.
had less.
Yeah. It could be partially that. It's a different thought.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm just
okay.
thinking that way. And then also like with having like those like having the planes, you know what I mean? Like that's like catastrophic.
That's absolutely catastrophic. It was Manhattan, as we all know, looked like nuclear Armageddon. You know, all the paper drifting from all the offices have been destroyed, coming down like ash,
Yeah.
you know, from the sky, and people walking around covered in white, like they've just been, you know, covered in nuclear ash.
Yeah.
It almost looked like Hiroshima, Nagasaki at the end
Also,
of the Second
the
World
people
War.
who were in the climate and having that breathing that air in. Also, there's the people that died after the fact of having like the
Yeah.
toxicity in their lungs
So maybe
as well.
resentment,
Yeah.
envy, sense that the people in this part of the world, in United States, the Western world, they have the money and the things, and they don't share those things very well with the
Yeah.
rest of the world.
And on top of that, my mom, when she saw that happen on the news, she was praying with me, and all she was thoughtful going, "I'm going to be bringing a child in a World War III." She literally
Okay.
thought that like right in her brain.
Well, let's
Yeah.
keep going, okay? The idea is we're trying to understand what democracy is, why it's important, what its future is, at an eventful historic moment in history when there is an election in the great democracy, and many people are questioning if democracy will survive very well with somebody like Donald Trump and his supporters back in power. And they've made it very clear they don't like the democracy. They want something different. Okay, Daniel?
I would say, in my own opinion, first of all, democracy is an idea.
Democracy is an idea. Yeah, right. Democracy, very good. Democracy is an idea, and everything we humans do all over the world is driven by what is in our heads, our ideas. It's often said ideas define societies and civilization. Humans decide. These are the ideas we want. These are the ideas we support. Let's run with it. So excellent. Democracy is an idea. Very, absolutely.
And the people behind the idea, we are the ones that are going to make it look like what they feel it means to them. Because, okay, let me drift a little. When you talk about the attack on the United States
Yes.
on the 9/11, that was also an idea.
Go on.
Because just like seeing that, seeing the democracy, or let me say, seeing the way democracy is being implemented, in the United States seem to be a counter idea of what other people think democracy is. And when they are able to bring down that idea, they can superimpose what they think is the real idea of what it means.
Keep going.
And
Keep going.
that's what actually led to where we are today. Because and anybody can come and say, okay, I want to be the president of a nation, and these are my ideas, and these are the way I think I can implement democracy that will make you have your freedom. But in essence, that's the reason why I always say that human minds are the most complex thing on the earth because they can show you something like try to make you feel they are on your side or you are coming in for the interest of the people. But when they actually come in, where they have the power to make the right changes that they feel they are going to make, but something happened, but that cannot be explained. And that's the reason why we see what we see today. However, when we talk about the future,
And it's all about the future. This is very good. You, all of you, are here because of your future. Okay? So go ahead. You're in school, you're learning, you're going to have a degree, you're going to go out, you're going to do things. You're here because you are thinking about your future and you want your future to go well, don't you?
certainly,
Yeah. So go ahead, Dan.
when we think about the future, it all lies with everyone. And when we think about democracy in the future, it all lies with what we as an individual are willing to do to see that reality of that idea or of the ideal democracy we've ever think of. Because sometimes, yeah, Donald Trump may come in as the next president and might have to implement what he thinks democracy means to him. And because for the minority people also on inside, what they feel democracy means to them, that okay, for us to feel protected, for us to feel uh, heard, or for us to feel valued, there are some set of people that must be kicked out.
Exactly. They will lose. They will lose somehow. They won't win. They will be kicked out. They won't be part of this.
So, and on the other hand, we have some other people too that would like, oh, because of what we believe as democracy, as freedom for the people, this is what we stand for. But however, as you said, the choice lies with the people.
The choice lies with the people. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Let me bring this back because we only have 10 minutes, and I want to make sure we have some deeper insight to this question of why was this democracy attacked in the way that it was on September the 11th? That's going to help lead us to this bigger answer of what is democracy. And I want to make sure we get this up on the board. So, Daniel, think back to what you've just said for a moment. Mayrene's standing there, and we've got the board working, and that's excellent. So, based on what you just said in a word or two, why do you think that there was this event on September the 11th, 2001? What was driving the attackers? What idea? Vicky thinks it might be envy or resentment.
I would say power.
Power. Power for what? What kind of power? They want more power because they feel powerless?
I wouldn't say, I would say no, because not because they feel powerless, but they really want to exhibit how powerful they think they are. Because, in quote, the world sees the US as the most powerful nation on earth. And uh, super like most protected nation on earth, and no one dare not to attack them, or in quote that no one can attack them.
So I think we're coming back to where we were with AFTAB in Bangladesh earlier in the semester, which is when you want change and you really want change, do you need to be violent? Daniel, power. Just put power there, okay? Violence is a way that people want to change a system quickly. Some call it revolution. Vicky, just hold your thought for a second. I know, just because I want to make sure we're on track for the end. We only have a few minutes left, and I've kind of been taking this in a slightly different direction. But I want to come back and help us to understand the answer to the question of why the United States was attacked. And we've begun to answer that. We've just begun. I want to remind you about something today as we come to this very important moment next week in the United States, that there's another person here who's extremely important in this conversation, and that will help us to understand something about why the United States would be attacked, what is democracy, what the dream is, Daniel, that lures people to the United States and Canada. And his name is Elon Musk. Now, I don't know if you've noticed in any of the reporting on the campaign right now in the United States that the richest person in the world, who not too long ago was a nerdy computer geek sitting in front of his computer with a little spacecraft next to it in 2004. You can see early pictures of Elon Musk. And he was admired by many young people around the world for his innovation, his boldness. Elon Musk has thrown his full support behind Donald Trump in this election. So much so that he's doing something that is challenging the United States idea of what a campaign is supposed to be. He has brought money into the campaign. In his estimation, we all must be able to speak freely and do freely without any regulation, free to make the money we want, free to say what we want, free to do what we want, and free to become as rich as we want. That's his goal. He and his brother, he has a brother, by the way, his name is Kimball. The two of them came from South Africa. They were younger. They spent some time in Canada, and then we've learned now that they entered the United States illegally. His brother is quoted as saying that, admitting to that they crossed the border and they lied at customs and they got into the United States illegally. Elon Musk doesn't talk about that too much, but we know that because right now he wants to win this election. And he's decided that to win this election, you must oppose immigration. You must restrict access to the United States, even though hypocritically, he did what he's now fighting against. He came here into the United States illegally. But what he's done may help you to understand something about the future of democracy This is where it's very, very important that you follow what's happening over the next days. He has said that he will pay individuals money to bring others who will vote for Trump to the ballot on November the 5th. People who don't have the ability, maybe because they don't have the money or they're not interested or because somehow they're restricted, they can't get to the place where the ballot will be next week. And Elon Musk has said he will pay people to do that. If you say, I'm going to go get my neighbor who's not voting, but I'm going to bring my neighbor next week to make sure they vote for Trump, and my neighbor is going to get some money for it. We've never seen this to this extent in an election, that a person is bribing. Elon Musk would say that's freedom. Others might say that's corruption. We will see what the result of this is next week. But it's happening in a democracy. This is taking place right now, not in a part of the world where this kind of corruption happens all the time. It's happening in this great democracy. That's concerning, I think. Su Young, you want to say something? Vicky, and then I'm going to conclude, and we're going to pick this up next week. We will finish with everything, but next week we're going to have a very important piece of information that's going to make the class very interesting. There will be a result from the election. Su Young, go ahead.
I just want to say we all voted with our money. That's all. Like when people spend money on his Tesla cars, they didn't think about what he might do in the future in those elections. And I think to that much extent it's unpredictable. Same thing when they attack the buildings in New York. They do not anticipate how U.S. will respond to it because they kind of expected there will be some people who agree with him among the U.S. citizens. So that's all.
Thank you. Su Young, thanks for contributing. We'll get to your stuff next week, hopefully. I know Vicky has something to say. I want to see if there's anything in the Cosmos, Peta, Acadia, Fupang, Ariel, Eziani, Augustine, anything you'd like to say before we'll give Vicky the last word. Okay? I just want to make sure I thank Peta. Peta, thank you very much for sharing this, and I hope you come next week for the live class to be here, because that will be the most important class when we see the results. So we'll see you next week. If not, just shoot me an email and let me know you can't make it, okay? Otherwise,
I'll definitely make it, Professor Lon. Thank you very much. You've had my mind going, and I appreciate that.
Good. Okay, because I'm thinking of you now, of being here next week, because I want to bring you back into the class in this way. Okay, Vicky, go ahead. Grab the microphone from Daniel. Okay.
In a way, with like having like the democracy and everything, and you're voting, it made me think your future lies in your hands, because you're the one like signing the card with your hand and you're making your vote. Kind of thing, like the future's literally in your hands.
Absolutely. It's
a weird thought. It's like, because like yes, it's in your brain, but really your hands have to do the work. But yes, people who are disabled can't do it, so they do have assistants that do help them with that. But I mean,
being paid? Do you think that when a vote happens, that there should be money involved in any way related to the vote?
No.
Is a vote just another deal that Elon Musk is making with his suppliers? You know, a businessman, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, big businessmen. Even though we know Donald Trump went bankrupt 5 times, he won't talk about that too much. But so, isn't a democracy different from business?
Yeah, like I think I think Musk is a great guy. He just want to persuade people, you know, like people that couldn't or that didn't have the means to vote. So I don't see that as corruption. or bribery. So just to encourage the voter. So it's supporting Trump in that way. So it's not, I believe, it's a it's a great idea just to encourage people to vote.
But in a democracy, shouldn't, if the future is in our hands, shouldn't money be separate and kept apart? Because once you bring money into this, aren't you potentially corrupting people? What do you think about that? Is it Eziani? Or is the money, we shouldn't worry about that? Money's okay? Oh, it's Augustine. Yeah, sorry, Augustine?
Yeah, I think money is okay. Like it's kind of as a means of motivation to persuade people, especially for those that don't have the means. Just like as you mentioned, there are people that didn't want to come out to vote because they don't have the means to go to police station to vote. So without money in place, so that will motivate them to leave their home to vote for whoever they want to vote
Um,
for.
can I interject 1 second, Augustine?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead, go ahead.
With my utmost respect, right? We walk a very fine line,
Yes.
a
Fine line.
very fine line when we remove our values
Oh.
from the system of democracy. It's a very fine line. We have to be very careful. I understand that's your opinion, but we have to always be mindful of our values. And when money comes into play, values sometimes go out the door. And this is with my utmost respect, but I will disagree with you. And I appreciate your comment, but we walk a very, very fine line when we can be bought and sold, or
Yeah,
values go out the door. So we have to be careful. I understand what you're saying, encouraging people to vote, but if you're going to pay them to vote specifically for a person, where is your value system? We have to be very careful. We have to be very careful. And this is where us educating ourselves properly, us having discussion like this with Professor Lon, that we get a clearer understanding of what democracy really is. We have to be very careful because ignorance is a lot of what they take and get us a lot of times. That's just I'm sorry, Professor Lon. I'm sorry.
No, I only want to remind you we're running 5 minutes late, and I want to remind all of you of this. But what is happening between Augustine and Peta and this kind of discussion, and Daniel, you're going to get the last word and then we will finish, is priceless teaching. You are learning from each other and I'm helping you. And we're going deep into things. This is meaningful. This is insight. So finally, let's let Daniel address this, then we're going to conclude. Be here next week. It's going to be fascinating. Daniel, go ahead.
For me, I would say, Augustine, you might be right in your own opinion, but for me, I would say that if Elon Musk have suggested that it's not just for Donald Trump, for the both parties, and it's okay, I'm going to do this for the
both.
United
For both.
States. Yeah. I'm going to do this for the United States to make sure that everybody
votes.
gets equal right to
Vote.
That would be fair. But being on one side, I've never seen, as far as democracy is concerned, where money is involved in politics when it comes to voting, that it produces the right person. It's never done.
Here's our final. Where money is involved in politics.
When it comes to voting,
When it comes to voting,
it never produces the right person.
it never produces the right person. We got to end there. That's Daniel. That's insight. I want you to think about that. You have a discussion post. And for all of you here, you just have a question. You can always write more, but I can't give you extra marks yet. That's coming in the final assignment. I can give you bonuses. But for those of you online and for the recordings, you have 175 to 200 words to explain the reason for that question. So you may want to phrase a question around what has just been said by Daniel and then give the reason for it. But where money is involved in politics when voting, it can never result in the right choice. Well, maybe we'll see. A choice will be made next week. Money has been involved. Let's see what happens. Whatever happens next week, the world is going to be noticing. I guarantee you. A lot of people talking about what happens next week. We got to end, okay? We have to end. Vicky, hold it for your, unless it's really fast. I want to make sure his words ring. So let his words ring, okay? Come and talk to me, okay? It's leave it for your discussion post, okay? I want to make sure he's. Oh, it's for me privately, okay? Okay, everybody, I'll see you next week, okay? Way to go. Thank you, Peta, and everybody else. Stay alert. Think about democracy. Take care. Smart board working, and we got it working on the side screen. Way to go. Okay, so live chat. Yeah, you save. Great. Save, and then I'm going to turn my microphone off.